Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Loudguns and today we're going to be talking about piracy in Star Citizen. I think it's a really important topic for all of us to consider. I've seen some brilliant instances of piracy at the Jumptown 2 event recently, and it's going to get a lot hotter as we head towards the long-awaited cargo refactor. Pirates are finally going to be able to take what's yours, so like it or not, you're going to have to come up with a plan to deal with them. Creating this channel has been a great experience for me, born out of a desire to learn a new skill during the various lockdowns, and I'm always trying to improve on quality, so one thing I'm keen to do is cut intro length and get to the point a bit quicker. I know that's a problem for me. But just forgive me a couple of housekeeping points, then we'll be on with it. First, if you're keen to come and join an active community, because it's dangerous to go alone, come over and say hi. The link to the Frontier Discord's just down below in the video description. Also, if you're thinking of getting into Star Citizen, just make sure to use somebody's referral code because it nets you some extra starting cash. So this one's mine, but by all means just use anybody's you can. So let's just get one thing out of the way at the start, because the words pirate and griefer overlap quite a lot in the SC community and I don't think it's quite right. Some people are out there to just ruin other people's fun, and they'll play outside of the intended mechanics of the game, just coming along to disrupt events and pad ram, or attempt to pad ram, to try and bring some people down to the gutter with them. These people are griefers, and it's a shame they exist, but there isn't much we can do about them. My best advice is just to avoid giving them any salt. That's what these guys feed off, and if they don't get it, they're likely to get bored. Admittedly, some pirates will stray and cross the line into griefer territory. I think one issue, being completely fair, is that CIG have not given too much attention to PvP. And without much to do, PvP-oriented players can get a bit bored and some of them will turn to seal clubbing. Hopefully, improvements in the game will bring some of these folks back the other side of the line. Because piracy is a legitimate game loop, where the individual or org is seeking to profit by plundering your booty. They're playing a high-risk, potentially high-reward loop, and if you have an issue with their existence, then maybe the game isn't developed quite enough for you yet. Bit more on that later. We're going to look at some tips that might help you get your goods to market, but the one thing I'm going to plead with you not to do is hit Alt F4 or try and get to a bed in combat log. Honestly, if a pirate's got you dead to rights and you want to give them the finger, just refuse to pay them and take that one-way ticket to a new clone body. Or, as and when the cargo refactor's in and they're going to try and steal your cargo anyway, hit that self-destruct button to deny them if you wish. But have the courage to go down with your ship. Abusing the 30k protection to wake up back at the station after combat logging, it's an exploit, and if you do that, then in my eyes it's you who's the griefer, not the pirate. Okay, so with the rules of the game established, let's get on and look at some tips. Stanton's not meant to be a safe zone, it's effectively low-sec, maybe mid-sec space. There's some comm arrays for sure, but they don't cover much of the system. The Navy's going to show up if things get really hot, but they're not going to be there at light speed if your mole or C2 is getting jacked. And the criminal justice system exists, but it's fairly lax. So rule 1 is to hire security. So I'm a finance guy, so I think of a lot of things in terms of risk and reward. And while Stanton is a relatively high-risk zone, it comes with pretty decent rewards as a result. So you may have seen some of my other guides on how much money you can make operating mining trips in the system, and to be honest, the reason the returns have so much potential here is because you aren't meant to pocket all of that profit on your own. A mining run in Stanton should have some more overheads to it than just some modules for your mole, and if you're flying solo out there, you're sort of asking for trouble. So if you're a trade or industrially minded player, you need to make yourself some friends and accept that a logical cost for you is some security focused players to fly along with you. You're going to need to pay a respectable amount for these people. To drop in another finance term, think about their opportunity cost. They could be out running bounties and making cash that way, so you can't take the mick, you have to make it worth their time. But think about limiting their downtime. The escorts that you're paying for can double as scouts, helping to improve the speed at which you find deposits to mine, whilst being on hand in a fighter if things get hot. And also think about only flying with what you can afford to lose. The old Eve saying is don't fly if you can't rebuy. And obviously we don't have the issue of rebuys, but we can still apply the same principles. So loading up a C2 full of Q and cashing it in for 6 million credits or so, it's a great feeling, but if you can't afford to take that hit without your window developing a computer-shaped hole, then don't do it. Limit what you're putting at risk to what you can bear losing. If that means doing 6 runs of 1 million credits worth each rather than just one big run, then so be it. Also be aware of what ships spawn in hangars versus what ships spawn on pads, and ideally get yourself into something which will spawn in a hangar for things like running your refined goods to market. Hangars are some of the best protection against getting held up as soon as you leave a station, which is the point where you're particularly vulnerable. They give you time to prepare better without risking pirates, or for that matter, the griefers who like to pad ram. Don't be in too much of a rush to leave. Ideally have some escorts run a circuit around the station to scout for anybody lurking, and if there are some suspiciously piratey looking ships lurking at the hangar doors, feel free to stall the ship and walk away, just save that load for later. But assuming they're not there, let your shields power up, and even take the time to get that first jump plotted and your QT drive spooled. Then, to quote an already sorely missed dude, come out of that hangar like the proverbial bat out of hell. So there's a really big importance to just being hard to predict. So I've played my part in making Lyria to Arkel 1 the hot route for pirates. I get it, Lyria is easy money, but with easy money comes that higher risk. Nearly every piracy-oriented stream or video I watch involves a trap being laid on the main space lane between that moon and station. So to start with, don't take the main space lane. Honestly, at this point, if you're doing this, you're just being lazy. Or if your excuse is that your timer is running low, then you're being greedy. You let that timer get low by sticking around to squeeze every gram of quant out of the situation. Just leave yourself a comfortable buffer to make a multi-point jump rather than a single stage jump straight back to the refinery. And apply this principle to every money-making activity, particularly runs to sell your refined materials. Similarly, be aware of what pirates expect you to do in a variety of circumstances. For instance, Area 18 is a very popular selling point given its high inventories, so maybe don't go there. You have 3 other choices, and piracy is very often a waiting game, so pirates will play the probabilities and won't set their traps up on such low traffic routes. So just use this to your advantage, add a bit more variety to what you're doing and don't settle into a pattern. So this came up in a previous video, but it's a really important point, so I'm happy to make it again. Guns and armour are not expensive in the context of nearly any money-making activity in Star Citizen, and if they're expensive, then you can always go and just run a bunker mission and get a whole bunch of armour for free. I understand that with the inventory changes brought in 3.15, some people are thinking primarily about ways to limit what they can potentially lose, and reducing outfitting costs is very tempting. After all, you might experience a bug and find yourself wearing nothing but a medical gown, so why waste 10k getting equipped with a set of heavy armour and a gun? But it's a good habit to get into, particularly if we're talking in the context of the cargo refactor. Piracy is increasingly likely to lean towards boarding actions. So a side tip here is to watch the content put out by quality pirates. One I'd recommend, and I'll link a video, is Xperia888. So she favours boarding actions as a way to push the gameplay. But the amount of times I've seen someone fall victim to her who's been unable to defend their ship due to a lack of weaponry is a bit disturbing. Ships are set up to favour the defender in the case of boarding actions. They often have multiple choke points, such as the ladder in a mole, that any assaulter will be forced to climb without a weapon in their hands. But you can't use this to your advantage if you don't have a gun, so buy a gun. So reputation should matter in Star Citizen for more than just missions with the Bounty Hunters Guild. It's also a big thing amongst players. So good pirates are going to get noticed, so make sure that when you lose a load it's not totally in vain. Take notes about who it was who jacked you, keep a list of their in-game name, and look to share or trade that information with like-minded players and orgs. Use the comms list to check who's in a shard with you, and plan accordingly. If you see the names of known pirates appearing, particularly those who've jacked you before, maybe it's the day to take out your vanguard for a spot of bounty hunting rather than running that C2 full of refined quantanium to the market. The game's still a long way off release, but there are things we can do now which will be useful in years to come, and decent intelligence such as lists of active known pirates is going to be valuable in the future. And that brings me on nicely to just some closing thoughts. So remember that you can't really lose anything. Star Citizen's an alpha, and none of the financial progress that you make is going to carry over to live, only your experiences. So you can choose to view getting pirated as someone taking something from you, but I would say turn it around. You view it as a lesson that they gave you to learn. Analyse what you did. Did you do something wrong that made you an easy target? Was there something else you could have done that could have got you out of the situation or helped to avoid it entirely? And one that I know a lot of people aren't going to like me saying is that if you're sort of just a solo player running a load of Quantanium to market and a pirate has you banged to rights, there's no shame in paying them a ransom if that's what they're asking for. If you've got no other way out of it, it's very much your personal choice. You might want to put that proverbial finger up and blow your ship up, but equally, if they're demanding a quite reasonable ransom, maybe it's logical for you to just pay them 50 grand so that you can carry on your way and cash in your 500k. And finally, I do understand that there are some people out there who just don't want a PvP experience at all. On the one hand, I do think you have to be aware that this is a PvPvE game that you're signing up to play. And I sincerely hope that we don't get anything like a PvP slider or the single player multiplayer merge that makes me wonder what on earth Elite Dangerous even is. But I think there should still be something there for people who don't want sort of their day-to-day to involve dealing with pirates and getting into PvP. Now that's not me personally. I want to be looking over my shoulder, even as an industrial player. I find a world without risk boring, and I think I'd get tired of a game that devolved into Billionaire Simulator 2952. But I think the way around this is the introduction of high-sec zones. I, for one, really hope that after the scheduled introduction of nullsec in the form of Pyro and Nyx, high-sec is on CIG's to-do list soon afterwards. Areas of space where comm rays cover a lot more of the system, where the Navy is there to back you up the moment you come under attack, and where prison is prison. And a player who blows someone else up out of nowhere screeching "get good" as they dive bomb an Aurora finds themselves staring at four walls for the next 12 hours, with no early release programs and no quasi-platformer minigame to get back out into the world. This will give players who don't want PvP a safe space to enjoy, and orgs a better place to run just for fun events and teach new players. Just so long as they can accept that there should be nowhere near the rewards available in high-sec compared to the risk-laden world of low and null-sec. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I always like to try and find topics that might spark a bit of debate, so please feel free to get in touch in the comments. I do my best to read them all and get back to as many as I can. Just one polite request to avoid the name calling. Like I say, pirate does not equal griefer, but in much the same way you can just come across as a tool when you go around calling people who aren't so into PvP Care Bears or Space Dads. The truth is that MMOs that focus explicitly on hardcore PvP get boring, then underpopulated, then die, just in the same way as MMOs that are pure theme parks where nothing bad can ever happen to you get boring, then underpopulated, then die. I for one want Star Citizen to become not just a great MMO compared to what we have already, but the best MMO. And to get there it's going to mean being a broad church with players of all stripes. So you can have your tribe, that's cool, but there's just no need to get nasty and exclusionary about it. If you do think I did a good job and have earned it by now, then please consider hitting the subscribe button. And maybe if you think a friend would enjoy the discussion, then share it around. That sort of thing massively helps the channel. We do also have a Patreon, which is included in the links below. But with all that said, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.